Hi Angel Cakes, thank you very much for watching the very first video for Self-Love September, which is a project that I do every September on my channel where I just talk about self-love entirely. The whole month on my channel is self-love centric. If you didn't watch my last video, which explains a little bit more about why I do SLS and how you can get involved and how you can make it really work for you, go back and watch that video first. I'll leave it in the down bar below for your convenience. So this very first video is going to be super special and very high vibe. It's all about self-love rituals, self-love magic, that kind of thing. I know I came in very, very hard with the first video for 2017 where I went straight in and talked about addiction, and a lot of people were like, Kellyanne, that is very much in the deep end for the first video. So I thought, you know what, this year I want to take it somewhere really high vibe, I suppose. So let's get into some rituals and some magic that you can do. I'm not just talking to witches here, I'm talking to anyone of the spiritual or mystical persuasion. Anyone who believes in the power and the value of ritual can get involved with this video. You don't necessarily have to be, you know, performing spellcraft if you don't want to. Just have a listen to some of these ideas. Some of them are not necessarily even magical or woo-woo unless you want to make them that way. There is a spectrum with a lot of these ideas that I'm putting forward, and they're not necessarily mystical ideas unless you want to dress them up that way and approach them from that particular perspective. So I do want to make that clear as well. There is a lot of stuff here that a lot of different people will be able to utilize. First of all, if you have practiced magic before, if you've tried rituals before, if you've experimented with different techniques and you know that there are certain things that work for you, obviously you're going to want to utilize those things. So if you've tried sigil magic and you know it's really good for you, you've had results with it before, obviously you're going to want to do a sigil for self-love. If you've tried candle magic and that really worked, that's what you're going to want to do. So, you know, if you've tried guided meditations and they work for you, don't be afraid to apply these things that you've learned that work for you to your self-love journey. If you've never really tried anything like this before, then you're free to experiment, and hopefully you're going to be one of the people that will get the most then out of this particular video, because it is just packed full of various different ideas that you might want to try. The final thing I want to make sure that I say is that you can totally feel free to make your rituals and your spells as flowery and as elaborate as you want to, or as simple and as stripped back and pared down and minimalist as you want to. It's completely up to you. It's horses for courses. Different people favour different kinds of things. I used to be super flowery with every ritual and spell that I did. Everything was very elaborate. There was lots of planning beforehand usually, and my rituals were made up of various different components, and it felt very over the top. Whereas now I've gone to a much more stripped back version of things in the main, although I do revert to my floweriness occasionally, so it's totally up to you. Here are some ideas that you can experiment with. The very first thing that I want to talk to you about, that I want to posit the importance of, is mirror work. Now, I actually have a mirror that I use for my personal mirror work. Let me go and grab it because it's got a really cool feature that makes it really enjoyable for me to use. Hang on. This is the mirror that I tend to favour for my mirror work, which I actually do on my altar space. I do have a mirror on the back of my bathroom door, but it's not the same as having the altar all lit up and being in sacred space. So I prefer to have a mirror that I can just grab from the side of my altar table and I pop it on there and I'm good to go. This particular one actually does have vanity lights on it that you can turn up, and you can kind of like turn them down. You can't really see it in this light because I'm using a soft light right now. There's my light in my room, and yeah, it just makes it exciting and interesting to use, because if it's the middle of the night I can just pop a candle on, and then my mirror is a vanity mirror so I can see myself really clearly. The lights are there. I got this for super cheap on Amazon, and it was just an idea that I had, that I wanted a mirror with lights in it for my mirror work. It makes it more enjoyable, more exciting to use, I think. So yeah, this is the one for me. This is the mirror that I use. I've had some very profound results with mirror work. I have talked to myself in the mirror. I have repeated words of power and prayers and promises to myself in the mirror. I have used beads, prayer beads, and gone through the prayer beads while I was looking at myself in the mirror. I've read letters out to myself that I wrote for myself in the mirror. I've even used a mirror to paint portraits of myself, and that's something that I did actually quite a long time before I had a really sort of big permanent altar space and was doing all of this elaborate self self-development work. I used to be quite interested in painting portraits of myself, so that's come into my magical and witchy practice as well. The next thing I want to mention that's really powerful, that's given me amazing results, is working with poppets. Now, this is the poppet that I usually use for my workings on myself. It is not very elaborate, it is not very specially done, it is very, very crudely made, as are all of the poppets that I make. And I've had this one for quite some time now, and this really does me good. This does the job. It doesn't need to be super elaborate. It's not something that I purchased. It's not something I spent a lot of time on. It's got my fingernails in it, my blood, my spit, my hair, all of that jazz, and some lavender in there, and that's it. And then I just sewed it up, basically. So you can find loads of instructions on how to make simple felt or cotton poppets online, and I just followed those instructions, and it is very crudely made, but it does the job. I tend to lay this out, and I really think of it as a symbol of myself. I rub herbs onto this, I whisper words of power over it, I place crystals onto it on various different parts of it, depending on what I'm trying to do, what part of me I'm trying to heal, what thing I'm trying to let go. I've tied ribbons around it to represent different things. I've done all kinds of things to it to represent different stuff that I'm trying to achieve in my journey of healing and self-acceptance and self-love. You can use a poppet that represents yourself, and you can cleanse it, you can heal it, you can whisper words of love and encouragement to it. You can put a sacred barrier around it using crystals, using anything you've got, you know, using sticks that you find outside and leaves, anything to represent the barrier that you're putting around yourself, to protect you from harmful influences, to keep you steadily on the path of self-love. There's so many different things you can do with poppet magic and poppet ritual. Having a poppet that represents you, something that represents you in some way, is very powerful. For me, having something that is shaped like a human being is particularly powerful, not only because I'm able to connect it more with me rather than an abstract object like a crystal, for example, or something. I'm able to connect it with me, but also I do a lot of healing work for my physical vessel, as well as in terms of self-love and release work and all that kind of good stuff. So for me, it's important to have a poppet that looks like a human. There are, you know, more abstract poppets that I do use. For anybody that is in the Neon Witch alumni, you will recognize this little fellow. This is my inner child or kind of inner baby poppet, and I do something very different with this. I cradle it, I give it love, I mother it, and it is a representation of the youngest version of me, teeny tiny little Kellyanne. And this is a super powerful and potent poppet to work with as well. Sometimes I cut words out of magazines and I actually pin them to the poppet to represent different things. Honestly guys, sky's the limit. If you haven't got a poppet and you're interested in self-love ritual, self-love magic, really honestly, I would recommend thinking about getting a poppet of some kind. My next tip would be to make a playlist, make a self-love playlist. Make a playlist that includes the tracks that remind you of everything that you've been through, everything that you've overcome, all of the strength that you've had to show. You could make a playlist that represents the way that you want to feel about yourself, the way that you feel about your life journey so far, and how you want to progress from here in a self-loving way. You can choose songs that remind you of various things in your life, or you can choose songs where the lyrics or the energy of the song directly speak to how you want to feel about yourself. So it can really go in any number of different directions. You can choose songs that make you feel powerful, that make you feel beautiful, that make you feel sexy. You can choose songs that really connect with the way that you want to interpret what a self-love playlist would be. And don't forget that once you've made your self-love playlist, you can use it in your self-love rituals and in sacred space and when you're at your altar and all that stuff. But you can also just listen to it when you're out and about, or listen to it when you're working out, or listen to it when you're getting ready to go out. You know, it's totally up to you. You can add to the playlist. I think it makes a really nice addition to any toolkit for anyone who's doing self-love related work. I have a self-love playlist. It's a private playlist on Spotify, and 3 of the tracks that I have on there are Dog Days Are Over by Florence and the Machine, which reminds me of just getting out of a really crappy situation, pulling myself out of a really crap time, scraping my money together and doing what I had to do to go to Moscow and stand in Red Square, which had been a dream of mine for so long. And listening to that track in Red Square was just amazing. It was a beautiful moment in my life. Also Come Home by Placebo, which saved my life once. I literally was in a very, very bad place. And I played that track, and it pulled out of me the remembrance of my authentic self, and I knew that I just had to carry on. As soon as I heard it, it just pulled this self-respect out of me, and I just thought, I'm not going to let these bastards grind me down. And finally, Marry the Night by Lady Gaga, it just makes me think about who I am in my soul. Next up on my list of suggestions for self-love rituals or magic is to have a burning ceremony. Now, obviously, with the magical side of things, you're going to be burning something to represent something that you want to get rid of, that you want to release, that you want to banish, that you want to have dissipate. With a ritual where there is no magical element, it's more like you are representing your readiness to release something. So there's overlap, as there always is, I think, with magic and ritual, but look, you take it where you want to go. If you want to make it into a spell, by all means do so. If you want to put it more on the ritualistic side of things, do that. It's really about what comes naturally to you and what feels good for you. But burning things does feel amazing. Obviously, be safe, make sure you've got that fire safety head on, but really burning, you know, photographs, burning clothing, burning like tickets or receipts or anything like that that reminds you of times that you know that you need to release, you need to integrate the lessons, but you need to let go of the baggage. Any of that stuff is so great. I even know people that have burned their former journals and former artworks. That is not right for everybody by any means, but it has been really amazing for some of the people I've spoken to that have done that. It has allowed them to release everything that was clinging to them from a former version of themselves, and it's allowed them to evolve beyond who they were before and really step into their new power and kind of transform. It's really up to you what you want to do. For some people, burning rituals are not right. I actually have a little cauldron on my altar, and I keep paper and a pen in the top drawer of my altar, and I love nothing more actually than to just write things down that I want to release, that I want to let go of, and then actually watch them burn in the cauldron on my altar. I've got like a fireproof plate that I put underneath, so it's all pretty safe, and that really gives me an amazing feeling. I think it's such a self-loving thing to do. Write letters to your past selves and your future self. This is such an amazing act of self-love, and it is really profound. It can help you to learn so much about where you are on the self-love journey and where you ultimately want to get to. I have written letters to my former selves. I've also written letters to myself that I intended to open in a year's time or 3 years' time, and when I've opened those letters, it's been the strangest thing. And sometimes it's not completely what I wanted and how I wanted to feel. Sometimes it's been very profound. I haven't done it for a while, but I may do it this year. I think I may do it during September, because it really is a very profound way of just showing your concern for yourself, your love for yourself, and your interest in your own life trajectory. You can write all kinds of lovely things in there. You can write the dreamiest compliments, you can write the most beautiful advice, or if you're writing to your former selves and you're writing to the most fractured parts of who you were in your past, you can say all of the things to yourself that you wish someone had said to you then, and really bolster that former version of you that you used to be, who maybe just needed some love, some encouragement, some form of empathy. You can be that empathy and that guiding force, and writing letters of that nature is just, like I said, really profound. Again, it's not right for everyone, and a lot of this advice is not going to be right for everyone, but I'd be really interested to know if anybody does write letters to their past selves or future self during Self-Love September. Please let me know down below. I'd be really interested to know that, because I think that's one that I might actually do myself this month, possibly, potentially. You might want to consider taking a ceremonial bath or shower. Lots of people do this kind of thing. It's very cleansing, it's very healing, and it's a chance for you to really connect with your physical vessel. You will notice every so often you'll see a photo on Instagram or something, and it will be, you know, a photo of someone's bathtub, and it's going to be filled with like flowers or slices of lemon or herbs or whatever, and there's candles everywhere, and it just looks so idyllic and so beautiful. And you know what? That kind of experience is very idyllic and beautiful, just to spend that quality time with yourself. And if you've got any healing or self-love work to do regarding your body, regarding your physical vessel, then a really invigorating shower or a really relaxing bath can be an intimate time with yourself, where you actually talk to your body as you wash it, and, you know, really just put the power back into your body and bring all of that power and appreciation back to you and back to your physical vessel. It can be a really beautiful self-loving thing to do. I know a lot of people only associate cleansing baths and showers with with preparing to do spell work, but actually it's an incredible self-love ritual or spell on its own, depending on the context of it and depending what you are doing during it. The way that you can make a bath or shower into a spell is simply to really see the water as a sacred tool, as a symbol of the cleansing that you are doing of your body, your mind and your soul. You know, cleansing it of, I don't want to say impurity because that sounds really puritanical and yucky, but you know what I mean? Like anything that's dragging you down, anything that's weighing you down, anything that's been hurting you, anything that you're keeping on your heart or in your mind or in your physical vessel that doesn't need to be. And you can really see the water as representing a cleansing that allows you to step into a new way of being, where you don't keep that stuff around you anymore and you don't put crappy things into you anymore, mentally or physically speaking. You might want to consider marrying yourself, actually conducting a marriage ceremony with yourself, conducted by you, and you may want to have something like a ring or a necklace or something of that nature, or even a tattoo that you wear to symbolize that you are married to yourself first and foremost. You can absolutely do this if you are already married, or if you are engaged to be married, or indeed if you plan to get married in the future and you don't want to rule that out. It's not as if you can only be married to yourself and yourself alone, but it is definitely very powerful, whatever your marital status, to marry yourself and to make that commitment to yourself. And you might want to make it a little bit more like a hand fasting kind of thing, where you check in every year with that commitment. I think that can be something really gorgeous to do, is just to really check in and say, hey, I'm still married to myself, and let me remind myself of that if I chance to have forgotten. Let me treat myself exactly the same way I would want to treat a beloved spouse. Let me see my commitment to myself as a serious thing by reaffirming it every single year. You might want to try a little bit of timeline magic or ritual, where you create a timeline of your life, looking at all of the different things that you've gone through in your life, the various challenges, the very low points, all of that stuff. And as you move along the timeline of your life, you might want to actually just kind of send your healing and your love to yourself at every single part of your journey. Once I made a timeline of all the major events in my life, and it spanned about 4 pages of A4, and I sat down in front of it and I put all of the years or the approximate years on it, and then I had a piece of rose quartz and I just moved it from the very earliest memories that I felt was significant that I placed on there, all the way through to the very end of the timeline to where I was in that current place when I was doing the ritual. And every stop that I put the rose quartz on, I spoke, I talked about the experience, I affirmed myself in light of that experience, and I spoke words of power and healing to represent my desire to integrate the lessons from that experience and to allow myself not to be burdened by that experience anymore. That was one of the most profound rituals I've ever done. It was so special and important, and I would definitely consider doing it again. Definitely think about that, and you don't need to have the timeline out in front of you on paper if you don't want to. You can just write a list on your phone or your tablet or your laptop, have it in front of you, and then just basically be in sacred space and talk, you know, maybe do a little speech out loud about each of those specific things and what they've meant to you. You might want to use tarot cards to represent those particular points on your timeline, and then maybe just put your hands over every card and speak to yourself at that age and speak about how you feel about that experience that you had, and think about how you're going to use it to be able to move forward in a more empowered way, but ultimately also let go of any baggage that might be left over as well. One of my next ideas is a very common one, but it's one that I think we often forget, and that is to create a meal for yourself or a drink for yourself and really invest it with your self-loving intentions, and then really just partake of the meal, ingest the food, ingest the liquid, and the whole time you're thinking about how that loving energy is going into you and how you are providing yourself with this beautiful sustenance. This is a really gorgeous thing to do. It's very underrated. I think some witches and mystical spiritual people do it a lot. Some people do it with every meal, and some people forget that it's even an option. I think it's really meaningful to create a meal for yourself, and all the time that you're preparing the ingredients and you're cooking this meal, you're thinking about putting that self-loving intention into it. And whether you see this as a spell or whether you see it as a ritual, again, conduct it and perform it the way that it feels right for you, but it definitely does give you an amazing feeling that you are nurturing yourself. And the next thing that I want to suggest is that you sweat to honor yourself and love yourself. I feel like when I'm working out, when I'm going to the gym, when I'm exercising, when I'm pushing myself in that way, that's a very self-loving ritual for me, and that is something that I will sometimes do instead of doing altar work. And I've said this before, sometimes I do not sit at my altar in the morning. I pick up my gym bag and I go to the gym. So the time that I would have normally spent at my altar, pulling cards, doing a devotional or meditating, I'm on the treadmill, I'm lifting weights, and that feels just as sacred to me. That is just as much of a self-loving ritual. Don't forget that where magic is concerned as well, you can sweat to release what is no longer serving you. You can sweat as a form of banishing. You can sweat as a form of protection and as a form of empowerment. There is a lot of magical quality in the art of really exerting yourself and sweating. There's something so symbolic about that. You could create a shrine to yourself. Some people will be more comfortable with this idea, some people will be less comfortable with it. Think about what a shrine to yourself would look like. Maybe you want to create a book for yourself instead of a shrine. You could definitely do that. Creating a self-love book, which is all about why you love yourself and how you're striving to love yourself more, could be more appropriate for some people. For a self-love shrine, it would include pictures of yourself at different ages. It would include maybe your favorite things, your favorite quotations, some of your favorite things that you wear, you know, different sort of talismans or amulets that you tend to wear and that kind of thing. You could put your hair on there, you could put all kinds of stuff on there. So definitely consider that as well if you think that might be an option for you, at least for a limited time, in order to really lean into the self-love work that you're doing. You can put yourself in a cocoon. This is something that I really enjoy doing. This is something that I do quite often. So I just create kind of like a blanket fort or a little den, something like that, and I put fairy lights on and I put my favorite books in there and I have my favorite tea and I just curl up and hide away. It's very much connected to inner child work from my perspective. You may not feel like that. Your mileage might vary on how much it's connected to inner child work with you, but this is a really profound thing to do, is just to hide away. And you might even want to turn off your phone. You might just want to have a few hours or maybe even a whole day if possible, where it's just for you and you are just hiding away and you've created your own little cocoon. And another thing I want to mention that you could do in your cocoon, or you could do it anytime, is self-love guided meditations. There are so many of those online that are going around that are so great. I would recommend that you try a few, but also don't be afraid to make your own. You know, on the average smartphone nowadays, it's really easy to use the voice memo function to record your own guided meditation. You know, get some bells if you've got some, and you can use them if you would like to. And you can actually guide yourself on a meditation that you know will be completely appropriate for you, because you are you and you know your needs better than anyone else. So don't be afraid to make your own self-love meditations as well. Tell your life story, write your memoirs, talk about your life to someone else, describe your life to someone else, open up to them about it. You might want to do paintings or drawings which describe different things that have happened in your life. This helps you to remember that you are the hero on your journey. You are the central figure on your journey, and it can be amazing to actually look at the myth that you have been living and creating as you've been going along. This kind of exercise really gives us the opportunity to honor ourselves for what we've been through and what we've survived. Ask goddesses, deities, archetypes, ancestors, spirit guides, historical figures, any kind of energy or entity that you can think of to come in and be with you and bolster you, and ask them to show you how to honor yourself. Sometimes the best way to honor yourself is to look at an archetype which really represents something that is either very pertinent within your nature, or conversely is not very pertinent and available in your nature and you would like it to be more so. I know that waking up every day and immediately looking at Joan of Arc does something for me that is very self-loving. I also know that walking with goddess energy and working with goddesses is very self-loving for me. There's something about that that really helps me to connect to my own power and to bring that power into the world and honor that power so much more instead of overlooking it. So this might be something important for you to consider. What kinds of deities, archetypes, guides or energies would you like to work with, which actually symbolize some of your characteristics that you would like to honor more or use more in the world. One thing that I really enjoy doing that is very powerful for me is something that I personally like to call love ingestion, and that is where I think about all the love that I have for all the people in my life who are most important, and I think about all the things that I love about those people, and I think about how much I want to honor them and how much I appreciate them and how much I'm so glad that they're in my life. And I think about this and I feel about this and I think about it and feel about it, and then when I'm at the very peak of all the love and the appreciation that I feel for so many people, from my audience members and clients to, you know, family members and friends and all of that, I feel that love and I embody that love, and then I turn it in on myself. And it is very powerful for me. It might not work for you, but for me it's very powerful because I have a lot of love in me. I have a lot of love to give to people. I have a lot of appreciation and compassion to bestow, but I don't always have that for me. And the whole point is that I'm turning it back in on myself. So definitely think about the value of love ingestion. Before I go, I want to say that sometimes we do need to do a ritual or a spell more than once in order for it to take effect. Sometimes we need to do self-love rituals regularly in order to really connect with the energies and the intentions that are flowing through us when we actually commit to doing those rituals. Do not feel bad if a self-love ritual or spell doesn't seem to go in the direction you wanted it to go. Always be aware that you can do these things, you know, on a regular basis. You can try different things. Hopefully some of these ideas have given you some inspiration. Catch up with me on social media and please leave your comments down below. Much love and self-love. Blessed be.